Welcome to our final set of lectures for Art169 2D Art in a Digital Space. So the textbook talks a lot about patterning and modular units. It does talk about matrices, which you've read and you kind of understand how we align things in a group. Before this lecture, if you haven't already, watch the Case for Abstraction from PBS, the art assignment, to help kind of introduce yourself to abstract art. So we've been kind of looking at abstraction a little bit all semester. I'm always throwing something more abstract in your artist lectures, and I don't know why I say this then, but students tend to have difficulty breaking down their work into shapes, or not making too many representative works. So we're going to talk a little bit about abstraction, how to approach it. So abstract art is a visual language of shape, form, color, and line to create composition which may exist in a degree of independence from visual references in the world. We are not, so it doesn't, sometimes it represents something physical, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the representation is very clear, sometimes it isn't. It's, I like to say, realism broken down to its base forms, shapes, feelings, emotions, spirituality of it all. New in quotations. Kind of art that encompasses fundamental changes that take place in technology, science, and philosophy. So when you watched the video from the art assignment, it talked a lot about how the change of technology really emphasized the fact that we no longer really needed to make representative art. It already existed. We had cameras. We've already kind of mastered this. So how can we represent the world in different forms? How can we distill it down? So abstract or non-figurative or non-objective art, non-representation are loosely related terms. They're similar, but it's not all identical meaning. So we have this piece. And we have a little bit from his an interview with him, which I think was really important. So these are called mountain paintings, and you can research Noel a little more. But the story is sort of there are feelings and ideas that are hard to pin down. We have a lot of emotions or feelings that are difficult to express visually. How do you express love? How do you express anxiety? How do you express uncertainty? And this is kind of what we're all doing, this creating work. So he wants to create a particular sense of light and energy, thinking of thin mountain air and crisp light. So his initial idea was light and energy, but thinking of something tangible, the mountain air, the crisp light. And they suggest obstacles and a way to get through them or over them. So all of that's within this sort of story. So it's not like, oh, this is this mountain and I'm making it look like this mountain, but taking sort of a metaphoric approach to it. So being inspired by nature in organic forms. So Noel says that nature is a source of inspiration in terms of form and emotion. So we can take something tangible and think on it deeper and how we could like to represent something. So the abstract, so things that are simplified, and I always say, and I'm thinking back to set 5 where we had the fruit forms and sort of stylizing them. So instead of directly creating a cross-section of a strawberry, how can you break it down and then break it down further and break it down even further to where maybe you get a hint of it, but not the direct idea of the strawberry. Push it apart. And that's what the Cubists and Fauves tend to do with their work. So looking at them for inspiration, painting the figures, the forms of the people into either big bold shapes or cubes, geometric style, something that's organic into a geometric shape. um, it allows us to even be more extreme with that. George Brawl. So a good example of cubism, sort of looking at these hard edges, saying that something's more representative. Think about these different planes and how everything's kind of filling around these different planes. It kind of gives you a different surface to work on, or even distilling it down even further. So there's a lot of theory behind it. We're not going to get deep into theory because theory can be difficult. It's always written in a different language that's poorly translated because sometimes we don't have those words in our English language, so it's very difficult to understand. But so some people say art should be purely about the creation of beautiful effects. Some say it should be created by pure patterns of form, color, and line, which kind of brings us to chapter 5 in our textbook. And it does not represent the material world, but can be seen to represent the spiritual, things that we cannot see. So I can, so if I'm working abstractly, I can just put a bunch of marks on a paper and call it abstract and be done. What makes abstract art good, which is always difficult. Some people say a strong composition, so something that's more formal. Thinking back to our composition lectures. Radial design. So we looked at radial design in our composition, but also when we did the mandalas, how to organize things in space. There's a pattern to it, a grid and axis, or matricity, like in our textbook that we talk about, and within our set 9. So aligning things horizontally, vertically, and diagonal. So everything's in a expected shape or form. Triangle design, bridge design, uniforms. So how to organize everything together. Again, you may take something a little more chance-based, which could be very fun. That's a link to the video. Just sort of start thinking about forms you see and distilling them out. And maybe that'll be some inspiration for set 9.